Welcome back to Coding Along. You're watching the FAQ Accordion project. It's been a long time we actually did projects on this channel, so I'm very excited about this one. So yeah, this is a basic FAQ accordion, but we put a lot of work into the CSS and HTML to make it look really nice. So yeah, and yeah, you click on it and you see the answer for whatever question, frequently asked question that you have, and the moment you click on another, you see that the previous one closes. So that's all JavaScript, of course. And yes, we're going to go through everything. So this video is going to be first the HTML, and then we do the CSS, and then we do the JavaScript, and then we just finish it off in the CSS again. We're done with adding or importing the images. The next part is just setting up our HTML. The idea behind this is, you see here we have two sections. This here is we have a wrapper that takes this image here, this image right here, and this image right here. And then we have a wrapper that's for the accordion itself, and this wrapper holds the whole accordion. And then we have different divs inside to hold each element, but we're also going to make sure we hold all elements at the same time. So we have one that takes the whole elements, the whole of this, and then we have another one that takes only this. That's the accordion with the questions and answer. And then we have another one another div that will take only the question, and then we have another div that takes only the answer. It's all going to make sense when we start with the HTML, but I just felt I set some before starting with the HTML, just to briefly explain what the idea behind this. And what we're going to do next is I want to add our icon, the icon that shows on the tab. We're also going to put a size there and a type. I will put this at the side. Now it's time to add our CSS and HTML files. Now we get to the main part. We're going to use main, which is going to take all the elements in here. We'll give it a class name of wrapper. So this main is going to contain every element we're writing in the CSS. This div is going to be called image wrapper. Inside this image wrapper div, we'll have another div that is going to be our image wrapper, and we add inner to it. So basically our inner image wrapper. Probably that would have been a better name, but already use this. So next, we're going to add that box. And we also give this a class name box. Yes, I see it now there. And we're done with this part. The next part is adding the accordion itself. And as I said earlier, we'll have an accordion wrapper that holds everything it's basically going to hold everything that's going to be contained inside this accordion. So all this will help us later on when we start styling it. And now inside this accordion wrapper, we'll have a h1, which is also going to have a class name, or accordion. I don't know how to pronounce it that well. So yes, you can see here FAQ. The next thing is we have the div that is, is going to contain our questions. So naturally we'll call this div questions accordion or accordion questions. Let's give it accordion questions. And this div now is going to contain both the question and the answer. The next div we're going to create is questions answer accordion. And after that, now we're going to have a div that is only going to hold the question. And in this, we have a H3. How many team members can I invite? That's the first question. And after that, we'll have our icon. So this icon is going to be inside the div question. Yes, so now we can see the icon. And that's it for our question. The next part is the answer, and the answer is going to have its own div too. And we're doing all this for the styling and also for the JavaScript, because as you saw earlier, the answers don't show. When you load the page, the answers are not there until you click on the question, then the answers appear. So that's why we're creating divs for separately for the question and answer. And this answer, we could put it in a p tag, but I find that very unnecessary. And yes, now we have the answer here. And we're going to repeat this. We're going to repeat this you repeat it as many questions and answers you want on your accordion. Here we're going to have 5. So we're just going to copy and paste now. And after that, we're done with the HTML. So the next part will be the CSS. Yes, now we can see the questions and the answers. And we're done with the HTML. The next part is the CSS. For the CSS, we're going to go to Google Fonts and use the pop-ins. The next part is we're going to set some variables because we're using different colors in this. The next, we're using roots to declare our global variables in the CSS. We have our font size, 12 pixel, and we have different colors we're going to use. Whenever now we want to use them, we just need to call their name and we can use them instead of writing all this all over and over again. We're setting the border box size and border box. Next, we set the HTML. Set the font size. The next part is the body. Start with a margin, remove the margin. 0. Now we have the font family. Yes, now we can see the font family has been updated. And we set our height to 100 viewport. And the width to 100 viewport width. And we can see there's a little bit of adjustment in the height and the width. The next part is the background. And the background, we're using linear gradients. The linear gradient is After setting the background, we're using a grid because we want this to be responsive. We use display grid. So we're setting a grid for the body. And the next thing is justify content to center our content. You can see that it's actually been centered. And align content too. And align content. We set that to center. Now that's all for the body. The next part is we have to start styling the wrapper that holds everything. The main that we gave the wrapper class name. We set the background to white. Now you can see the background of the main wrapper is white. It is in the center. And we did that with justify content and align content. Next thing, we'll give it a border radius of approximately like 30 pixels because we want it to show. Now we can see the border radius showing the radius of each angle. Next thing, we set a height for it. And the height we're using is 509 pixels. And also a width of 920 pixels. And now we can see what the setting of the height and the width has done. It's in the center and it's starting to look like what we want it to look like. And we also put a display grid here because, as we said, we want it to be responsive. So we want to create some grid lines in there. And we use the grid template columns to set the direction of the elements inside the wrapper. And the elements are the FAQ and its contents. We set that to 400 pixel direction and 1 FR. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I can't explain everything because if I did that, this video might be 4 or 5 hours long and I don't want that. So I'm just trying to explain it as much as I can, but also putting time into consideration. Next thing, we use a grid gap. And we give that 6 rem. and after that, a background image URL. And now we should see the background image. You can see it's quite transparent, but yes, that's the background image we're using. And for sure we remove the repeats, because if you don't do this, it automatically repeats. So we say no repeats. And we set the background position because we want it to be a certain way. We don't want everything from the background picture to show. So we set the position and we use the percentage. We say 120, 1260%, and then 65%. Wow, background color, background position. Now we can see the background, its position. And this is all for the wrapper, or the main wrapper that contains everything in our FAQ. The next part is I want us to remove this. I don't want this showing the answers. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to use the question answer underscore accordion, and we use this functionality where we say anything less than that dot the answer, we want the display to be none. Now we want to basically make the display of the answer to be none. Now we set the display of the answer to none. The next thing is to style the accordion wrapper. The accordion wrapper is also the div that contains, we have a main div that contains everything. The images, the background, contains everything. Now we're dealing with the accordion wrapper. As we can see in this HTML, it only deals with this section. Now we're styling this section. Now we're styling only this section. And we'll give it a margin top because you can see the space here is quite little. So we want more space there. Give it a margin top of 70 pixel. Yes, we can see the difference now. Looks way better. And display flex. And after the display flex, we do the flex direction to make it a column. Yes. And that's about it for our accordion wrapper. Now we're dealing with the question accordion. The questions accordion. So this is the div that holds all the questions, but it's excluding the FAQ H1 tag. That's why I chose this project, because it's like elements inside elements inside elements, and this is a very nice way to learn how to manipulate CSS. We set this to the height to 100% of its container. So it's going to take 100% of the container it's in. And you can see that by, if I give it a background color of something different, of yellow, you can see it's taking the full of its element. And now we give it a display. Give it a display flex, and we'll also do the same for flex direction for all the elements inside. Not only now the FAQ, not with the H1. We give it a flex direction column. Now the next one is the div that contains the question and the answer. That's the one we're styling. We're going to give it a width, and we give it a border because we give it a border bottom because we want a line to show at the, it's better we just see it. We want a line to show below each question. And when you click on it, we want that line to show on below the answer. So that's why we're doing it here, because we want it to show below the question, and when we click on it and activate it and the answer shows, we want it to show below the answer. Yes, we give it a width of 350 pixel. Now, why we can't really, we can see the width now, but the best way to see is when we add the border to it, the bottom border. border bottom. One pixel. Don't want it to show too much. Solid, of course. And this color is a little bit faint. It's a little bit of grayish. E8, E8, E8. Yes, so now we can see it. We can see the line. It's very faint, but it's showing. And that's how we want it to look like. The next thing is we're quickly going to just style our title accordion. So this FAQ, we'll give it a font size. I will also remove the margin top. Font size, we add 3 rem to it. You can see it's a lot better now, a lot bigger. And margin top, 0 pixel. Yes, we can see it went a little bit higher up. The next thing we're going to style is the questions. So our accordion questions. Or before we start it, the next thing we're going to style is our title question. So our title question is here. We gave the h3 tag a ID, so that's what we're styling. We'll give that a font size of 1.2 rem. And yeah, you can see the difference. And we give it a font weight of 400. A margin of 1.4, 1.4 rem, and 0 rem. And the color. And here we're utilizing the variables we initialized earlier on in the video. Yes, and we can see the difference now. The next part is the questions. We're dealing with the question alone now. And this question here, number one, the icon not to be below here. We want it side by side. So the way we do that to make them side by side is with display flex. And now we can see it. It just moved. And after display flex, we use justify content. And we're using this to move it to the, we want to create some space between the text and the icon. So the way we're doing that is we're creating space between those two elements. And now you can see the difference. There's a space between. But I'm sure you're wondering, why is the div like this? Why is the icon like this? It's because we've used display, we've moved it, and for us to make it look the way it's supposed to, we will have to use align self. But before we do that, I just want to add a pointer to this question. So when the mouse is on it, or when the mouse hovers on it, we can see a pointer instead of the mouse icon. So we do that with cursor pointer. And I just want to add transition to it. This is really optional, but it's always nice to just add these other things for people who haven't really used them before. Yes, so this is when it gets clicked, it's going to transition with 0.3 seconds. Yes, we're done with that. So now we can go to basically say questions, the questions and image, because we use the image for our icons. And we say align self. Align self, and we make that center so it doesn't stretch the way it is. And voila, we can see it's at the right size. It's not being stretched, it's the way we want it to be. And now we need to deal with the image we want to add here. We're using the coding along image icon. So we're adding the image here. But before we do that, we have to set the image wrapper that we have right here. This image wrapper, we set whatever it's inside it to relative, the position. And now, since the image is going to be inside here, it's basically going to be on top of this box that we have right here. It's going to push it up. It's going to push the box down when we add it. And yes. So we add a background URL, and this is how we're adding the image. Oh, why isn't it showing? It isn't showing because we haven't set the dimension of what is in there. So the way for it to show is if we just give it a height and we say we want this image to take 100% of the container it's in. When we do that, we see it here. But we can notice we have to also do the background repeat and set it to no repeat. And now the background position again, because we have to set the position. And we want this to be in the center, but we just set it to 120%. That means we want it a little bit zoomed out. Center. And you can see we're practically done with the CSS. The only thing now is this box. We don't want it here, we want it right close to this image here. And where we do it is with box, which is the class name of that image. Set its position to absolute. And after setting its position to absolute, all we need to do is just top position 42%, and you can see it's up now since we use the top. And left minus 25%. So now it should be where we want it to be. You can move it wherever you want it to be, but this is where we're putting it for this tutorial. And this is all for the CSS, but it isn't working yet because we have to add JavaScript to it. So this is a really nice project to actually see the different part, how HTML plays its part, how CSS plays its part, and how JavaScript now it's going to play its own part in setting the functionality of this FAQ. The next part is the JavaScript section of this. We add a query selector to our question div, and the way we do it is we give it a constant, or we don't even need to give it a constant. We can just say document dot query select all. Then this is the class name of our question div, and then dot for each question, which we're going to check for each of them because we have multiple of them. And we create a function that's going to listen for the event. We add an event listener to that. Which is going to listen for a click. When we click on the question div, a function is going to be called. And this function will start with an if statement. If question dot parent node, and what we mean by parent node is we mean this element here, the question and answer. We want it to return the question and answer because when we click on it, we want the question and the answer to show. So that's why we're using parent node. The class list dot contains, if it contains the act, if it is active, basically it contains the active class. And question the parent node dot class list dot So we basically toggle it. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. I will answer them, but this is I don't want this video to be too long. That's why we're going through it. Else. So this is to make sure that when one element is opened or when one element is active, we don't want two elements to be active at the same time. When one is active, if it's another is being clicked on, we want that one which is active, the current active one to close, and then the new one that has been clicked on to be the new active. So that's why we're using this else statement here. No, for each question, for each question, questions the parent node the class list the remove active. And then question the parent node the class list the add. Now we're adding the active class. Active. And yeah, that's about it. Should work now. You can see it's working. Click it, it opens, closes. You click one, that other one, the previous one closed. Click it, the previous one closes. Previous one closes. So this is the functionality we just did in JavaScript, and we're done with JavaScript. That's what I meant by it's a very basic JavaScript, not so much code. We could switch it up and actually give this here a constant name. So instead of writing it here and here, we just do it once here, and then we use the constant name here too. But yeah, just did it like this. And now we want to add some functionality for when it's been active, because I want here when it is active, I want this to be bolded. When it's being clicked on, I want the icon to actually switch. So I want it to rotate 180 degrees when it's active. So that's what we're going to do now. So we say dot active image, and we use transform, rotate 180 dig. And also just add a little bit of transition. All these are optional, but yeah, I just want this to have it. Ease in. So now, see, it switches 180 degrees. Yes. To make it 2 seconds, 0.2 seconds. when it's active, I want the H3 to be a different. I want it to be bolded. So we'll just do the font weight. And you can see here, you can add whatever, like that's the whole point. You do the Java, that's why I said we did the JavaScript part, and then we have to come back to CSS just to also create the functionality for when it is clicked on. Because we've added the event listeners for the clicks and all that. Yeah, and that's about it. Finished. See? When it's clicked on, it becomes bolder and darker. That's about it. So this is the FAQ accordion. And this is an amazing thing to have on your website. So try it out, and that's all for now. If you liked the video, give a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and yeah, many more videos to come, many more projects to come. Yes, we will be continuing the JavaScript tutorials and also the data structures and algorithm tutorial. I'm still thinking about it, not sure yet, but I'm thinking of adding a Flutter tutorial too. But yes, just keep your heads up for all that. Thank you and peace out.